should we as Muslims be voting in independent MPs in the upcoming elections? You know, the situation in Gaza has nullified the image of what Muslims had for Tory and especially Labour within the UK. Muslims just do not feel that they can vote for Labour anymore. And so on the back of that, you've had a massive rise in independent candidates who are looking to win a few seats in Parliament. The idea is that Tory and Labour no longer represent the Muslim community, and therefore the Muslim community must have its own representation within Parliament. But is there any real weight to this theory? Let's have a look. First and foremost, the position of an MP is a legislative one. What that means is that the role of an MP is to sit in Parliament and decide right and wrong, decide legal and illegal, decide on policy, decide on legislation. And according to Islam, for a Muslim to legislate is completely haram. No question about it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, "Inil hukmu illa lillah." Legislation is only for Allah. "Fahkum baynahum bima anzal Allah." Rule between them according to what Allah has revealed. So for a Muslim to then come along and rule according to his own thoughts and ideas is haram. Also, if these candidates do win the vote, they must make an oath and swear their full allegiance to the King of England, which of course is haram as well. Some will say, but because of the lesser of the two evils, we have to vote these independent MPs, or else Tory or Labour are going to come in. Surely the independent MPs are the lesser evil. This idea of lesser of the two evils is when a Muslim, for whatever reason, is compelled to pick between one of two evils, and therefore they pick the lesser one. However, in this case, we're not forced. In this case, we're not coerced. In this case, we have a third option. The third option is to abstain from voting, full stop. Some will say, but we need these independent MPs in for the benefit of the Muslims. But first and foremost, the ends do not justify the means. You cannot commit a haram just because it may result in some benefit. In the same way, I cannot say to you that I'm going to earn a haram income. I'm going to bet, I'm going to gamble, I'm going to shot. And then with that money, I'm going to build a massive masjid in my city, which will benefit all the Muslims. Ends do not justify the means. Secondly, when we say benefit, what are we talking about? We're talking about benefit from the Islamic point of view or from the worldly point of view? From the worldly point of view, fair enough. I admit, these independent MPs, and in fact any MP, might bring some worldly benefit. They might fix a few potholes. They might renovate certain areas. They might give extra funding in certain departments. But when we talk about Islamic benefit, they're not going to be the implementation of Islam. They're not going to change government policy. There is an agenda which is being spewed from the very top against Islam. And it is not the role of an independent MP to even get involved with that. And finally, if you're still not convinced, if you still believe that these Muslim MPs are going to bring some kind of benefit, then let's just look at the Muslim MPs that we have had and let's see what kind of benefit they've given us in the past. When it comes to voting on the teaching of LGBT, when it comes to how they carry themselves, when it comes to some of their own statements, when it comes to what they voted on in Parliament, they have not benefited the Muslim community. They have actually further harmed and secularized the Muslim community. And they do not represent the Muslim community in one bit. Some will continue further and say, yeah, fine, but Gaza needs our help. Yeah, I agree with you, it does. But is it going to be helped by the British government? Is it going to be helped by the British establishment? Those who are the direct reason for why the Zionist entity exists and why the situation in Gaza is going on. Are you then going to turn back to those very people for some kind of solution? And even if they did pretend to bring about some kind of solution, what are they going to do? Are they going to be a ceasefire, temporary, a few days, and then go back to the crime that they've been committing? Or are they going to be a two-state solution, where basically just 10% of the land is left, which is under Zionist occupation anyway? Some may still say, but look man, you're thinking too shallow man, you're thinking way too low. We're going to change the system from within. Silly thinking, I'm afraid to say. Firstly, it is not the MPs who control the country. It is not even the British government who control the country. The real powers and shakers, real ones who call the shots, are the capitalist elite. They are the ones with the wealth. They are the ones who fund the campaigns. They are the ones who decide which way the country will go. MPs and these other politicians are just a face of it. Do you really think you are going to change the system from within? Any semblance of a threat, of any kind of real change, they will remove you. I mean, forget these brown faces who are running for MPs. Jeremy Corbyn, an entire lifelong career in politics, leader of the Labour Party. He said something which they didn't like, he was removed. White man, you think these other MPs have got any chance at changing the system from within? When a Muslim starts to involve themselves with the Western system, they will either stick to their principles and be removed for that, or they will conform to the system and break every single principle that they ever started out with. Some will still say, but look man, there have been other ulama who have told us to vote and said that it's wajib, it's an obligation to vote. Yeah, there have been these ulama. These are the same ulama who said it was wajib, obligation to vote for Labour only a few years ago, and now they are saying it's wajib to vote to weaken Labour. They have to answer to Allah for that. And so you should bring these points to them. About everything I've said up to here, there is a slight exception, which I think is important that we note. If there is an independent Muslim candidate and he publicly makes it known that he has no intention of working within his role as an MP, and he has no intention of saying the oath to the king, and he has no intention of any kind of legislative activity, and he is simply running as a candidate, as a style of a protest vote, where he takes maybe a seat from the Labour Party, as a style of a message to the community, that is allowed. However, once the campaign is over, and even if he wins the vote, he is not allowed to go in that role. He must step down. That is the only exception in this case. And so far, I haven't seen from any independent Muslim candidate that they have the intention to do this. As a final point, just because it's haram to vote and get involved in this system, that doesn't mean that we become apolitical. That doesn't mean that we become passive and we sit around idly doing nothing. We can do our own work, independent of the British establishment, independent of the system. Everything that we have achieved so far in terms of awareness, in terms of campaigns, in terms of getting a message out there, has been from outside of the system anyway. Social media work, door-to-door, protesting, talks, lectures, campaigns. This is where the real work is, independent of the system. There's plenty to be done, and there's plenty that can be done within a halal means.